Morning, Brett. Good to see you. Doug, good morning. Jocko, good morning. Okay. All right. Good morning, guys. Looks like the comments are working this morning. Please like and share. Let me know where you're from. If you're a coin member, let me know what your coin number is. It's if you have never been on here before, this is Coffee with Rich. Looks like we got a lot of folks jumping on, so we'll start rolling into it, guys. My name is Rich Brown. If you don't know, I'm the what am I? Co-host, co-founder of the American Warrior Society, and the #1 podcast for self-defense in our beautiful country, the American Warrior Show. Hopefully my audio is working really good. I think I tested it before we came on, but you never know. This morning we are having, what am I having this morning? I'm having Pete's coffee out of my Nespresso machine, and once again, I'm drinking out of my tumbler. One of our American Warrior Society members actually makes these by hand in his shop, and if you're interested in getting one, you can get one on our store. Go to AmericanWarriorSociety.com, click on the store, and you can pick one of these up yourself. Good morning, guys. I'm going to put my spectacles on so I can actually read what you're saying, and then we'll get rolling. Let's see. Good morning, guys. Good morning, Kevin, Brett. Man, it's early where you are at, sir. Gerald, good morning. Another early riser. God bless you. Mr. Steeklander's on. Jocko, good morning. South Africa. Bob, good morning, sir. All right. Let's get moving. I am having I already told you what I'm drinking this out of. This is my Pete's coffee. Big fan of Pete's coffee, at least the taste. I'm not sure about their politics, but this is out of my Nespresso machine by DeLonghi, which is an amazing little espresso. All right. So this morning I want to talk to you about an article. And the article is on the American Warrior Society. And if you're not a member, it looks like mostly we got members on this morning, but those that will watch the reruns may not be a member. And if you are a member, you may not have seen this content. It's go to AmericanWarriorSociety.com. There's an articles drop-down menu. Select Edge Weapons from the drop-down. Click on it. If you're not a member, it's going to say that's okay. I just want to get the articles. If you're a member, you can use your login and read that article. But it's an Edge Weapons vlog I did. Yeah, give me a like and thumbs up, share if you like. But it's an Edge Weapons vlog that we did. I did it with two of our contributing authors. One was a SOCOM guy on active duty at the time. He now works for the Department of Energy. Anyway, Chad and Andrew, and we did an Edge Weapons vlog on what we carry. And Andrew is a SWAT officer. And we talked about edge weapon selection and all this other stuff. So if you're interested in that, I'd ask you to go ahead and check that article out. The next thing we're going to talk about is podcasts. Now, recently I went in and tried to find out what was some of our most popular podcasts. And of the top 10, the top 7th podcast was one that Mike Seeklander, my co-host, did with Mike Janich. And the podcast was on active shooter response. And it is a very popular show, and I encourage you to go check that out. It aired, the first airing was back in February of 2018. And it's show number 133. And check that out. It is a really good show, very popular show. Let's scroll down here. It's not only pixelated when you move too quick, but audio's fine. Hey, thanks, Brett. I appreciate that. So we talked about an article, which is actually a blog. Now, let me tell you something. The audio is terrible. I made this years ago before we kind of figured out the audio. But I would encourage you to check that out. And again, the archives for all of our shows are going to stay up there for probably with blockchain and computers, it'll probably be up there for a long, long time. So go back and give that show with Mike Seeklander and Mike Janich a listen. Active shooter response. It was relevant then, and unfortunately, it's still relevant today. Video is in fact iffy, but like that might be internet. Yeah, I have terrible internet here. We live out in the middle of nowhere in East Tennessee, and unfortunately, the video is not very good by virtue of the Wi-Fi connection. So we're going to keep rolling unless somebody tells me we need to try again. I'm going to push ahead. Before I do, what do you think, guys? Is the video good enough to keep rolling before we move ahead? Let me know, and I'm going to sip on my coffee. Yeah, Brett says he's trained with Mike Janich several times, and he thanks American Warrior Society for the introduction. You're good. Keep going. All right, getting thumbs up all around. So you're going to hear the name Mr. Mike Janich quite a bit in today's Coffee with Rich because, like my co-host, Mr. Mike Seeklander, these are coins from attending Marshall Blade Camp. They're absolutely beautiful coins. And we have attended his camp. Let's see. We've attended his camp a number of years and supported what Mr. Janich does. So those are coins from all the camps I've attended. And then we've brought him out to our American Warrior camp. So I've trained with him probably at least 6 times. And he has influenced everything that we're going to talk about this morning when it comes to edge weapon selection. So let's get right into it. Because every week I like to talk to you about a gadget. And if you remember from last week, we talked about my European everyday carry. It's also my non-permissive carry. And the reason I bring that distinction up is I had a gentleman reach out to me yesterday. He's a new American Warrior Society member. Shout out to you, Marco. He is a martial arts instructor in New York City. And I won't say his last name just in case he doesn't want to be outed here, but he's a new American Warrior Society member and lives in New York City. And he's like, Rich, I have some challenges. You guys talk a lot about the gun solution, and I appreciate that. He goes, but that's not something that I grew up with. It's not something that's even an opportunity for me to conceal carry in New York City. So I have to really get good with the blade. And he doesn't know much about the knife law or how to employ these things. So we're going to dive into that a little bit. But if you haven't seen my non-permissive kit, I encourage you to go back and look at that from last week. And if you're just joining us, good morning. Welcome to Coffee with Rich. We're up bright and early here on a fall East Tennessee morning. Like and share. I appreciate that. Let's talk about knives. Now, the first thing I need to tell you is when it comes to edged weapons, I'm not talking about knife fighting. As one of our members pointed out last night, nobody wins in a knife fight. This is not knife fighting. So let's take that misnomer and get it out of here. What this is surviving a violent assault when you're armed with an edged weapon, or surviving a violent assault against an edged weapon when you have nothing but your empty hand skills. Now that's Counter Blade Concepts, CBC. And you can learn more about that by going into the training vault, AmericanWarriorSociety.com. And we actually have some modules put together by Mr. Mike Janich himself, and he'll walk you through how to survive an edged weapons attack when you are completely unarmed. So we're going to talk about the Marshall blade. So knife fighting, forget about that. There's no such thing. We're not going to talk about that. What I do want to talk to you first about is, what do you want that knife to do for you? Now this morning, I've got all my knives laid out. You can't see them. I'm going to introduce them to you one at a time, and we're going to talk in detail a little bit about it. But you won't find a clinch pick here. Now, am I saying that clinch picks are bad? Absolutely not. Not at all. I think they're amazing. I never learned Mr. Craig Douglas's style of fighting with a clinch pick. And the reason I make that distinction is the blade is faced back towards you, whereas everything you're going to see this morning, the blade is faced away from you. So you have to know what the knife is designed to do and how to employ it, and that comes training. But what do you want your edge weapon to do? Do you want it to open boxes where you work? You're in the field as a Marine or a soldier and you needed an open an MRE, but that's really about all it's going to ever do for you. That's fine. But if you intend on using a knife as your secondary weapon system, then you probably need to have training with that, and you probably need to be pretty doggone specific with that. Lastly, before I get into the thing is how does a knife work? You'll see a lot of really cool punch daggers out there. I don't have any punch daggers here. Do I think punch daggers are bad? Absolutely not. They take something that, it's just, you can hold in your fist. If you can throw a punch, you can use a punch dagger. They work really well. However, you're relying on exsanguination or causing so much trauma to this other person's body that they stop their attack and move away. So that is a technique. What we're going to talk about this morning, the way that Mr. Janich's system is laid out, the Marshall Blade concepts, and I'm not one of his instructors. Maybe I wish I was, but I haven't got the certification yet. So I'm going to talk to you as a layman who's attended his training probably half dozen times. Pretty doggone familiar with the content. But what his system relies on is cutting the tendons, cutting the flexor tendons in the forearms, the bicep tendons, the tricep tendons, and thus defanging the snake, as he calls it, so that you can't grasp or hold anything. And this recently happened. I'll tell you the story, and then I will jump on here and rap with you for a minute. I had a real good friend, one of my jiu-jitsu partners, and he's out with a machete, and he's pulling down these tree limbs, and he's whacking away with the machete. And he feels that he's hit himself, but he thought he just bounced off because it didn't hurt too bad. The machete blade didn't hurt too bad. But when he reached up to try to grab a hold of the little tree limb again to get another whack at it, he couldn't hold the tree limb. He said, I'm grasping for it, but my hand's not working. And that's when he realized he had cut all the tendons in his hand. I say that because that's precisely the way Mr. Janich designed his Marshall Blade concept system, in that the cutting cuts the tendons. Hopefully they're survivable wounds for your attacker. But again, we're not knife fighting. This is a violent, felonious assault on you that you're trying to survive by using your edge weapon. So when you cut those tendons, just like my friend found out, you can't hold anything. If you can't hold the weapon, the gun, the knife, the hammer, the wrench, whatever it is, then you've done just what he said, defang the snake. So before I get into these weapons, let's look and see who's on here. All right, AWS cooler here at night, but still hot during the day. Yeah, it's a beautiful East Tennessee morning here, guys. Mike wants to get my pretty face out to the public. Smart move. Good business sense. We'll give him a like for that. My jiu-jitsu coach, Mr. Cody Hudson, is on. Good morning, sir. Always a pleasure. Scott Pigg, good morning, sir. Concealed blades in California is tough. Yeah, we're going to talk briefly about knife law. Matter of fact, let's use that as my segue. What's interesting is, like Scott points out, concealing a knife in California may get you arrested. In New York, you can carry the knife as long as it's concealed. If it's in a pocket clip, you're going to get stopped, and they're going to, as my friend who was a colonel found out, he was in New York City, had a knife clipped to his pocket, and they came up to him, tapped him on the shoulder, and was like, hey, man, I can see your knife. And he's like, okay. And he had to unclip it and slide it into his pocket, and they let him go. So it goes back to you really got to know the law. Some of these amazing fixed blades we're going to talk about are absolutely awesome. Can't carry them everywhere. Some places you can. Some places you can carry them depending on the blade length. Some places depending on a whole host of things. So please read the knife law. And that's all we're going to say about that. Let's jump in. First thing I'm going to do is talk about fixed blades. And we're going to start with, enough teasing there, Rich. We're going to start with the TDI. And this is the TDI. Hope you can see it okay. My Tactical Defense Institute. It's made by K-Bar. This is the original sheath that came in. So you can carry it in the appendix position. And I really like this knife for a variety of reasons. The sheath is pretty good, but the problem with the sheath is it didn't allow you to get a full purchase on the knife. So you'd end up like that. And hopefully you can see there's a gap there. So I didn't like that. So your old pal, Rich Brown, took a Dremel to this. And what I did was I Dremeled the retention away. I made a mistake. So then we had to go to an aftermarket solution. And the cool thing about TDIs is TDI is so prevalent in the industry that there's all kinds of aftermarket products. So this is an aftermarket product. You snap it on your belt line, you wear it in the appendix position. The thing I like about this TDI is I carry my firearm. I'm a right-handed shooter. I carry my firearm in the appendix position. So in the places I couldn't carry a firearm, I could wear the TDI. And then my draw stroke, I sweep the garment out of the way, and I grab the knife just like I would my firearm. If you're a punch guy, that's your solution. Guess what? TDI's got you covered. If you're a slash guy, more of a Marshall blade concepts, TDI's got you covered. With a fixed blade, when you draw the weapon, it's out. It's ready to go. There's no folding, no nothing. A lot of law enforcement officers were running these, and they were putting them right behind their mag pouch. And the reason they were doing that is it was providing an excellent means for weapons retention. If somebody's grabbing your firearm and all you can do is hold on with one hand, draw your TDI, and cut that person off with, then great, you've got it. I'm going to show you one more aftermarket solution that I really like. Shane Hemphill with Works made this. This is an amazing little rig. I really like this. It rides nice and low. Inside your belt will go right through here. And incredible construction. I can get a full purchase, great retention, really good solution. But I mentioned the law enforcement officer. The problem they were having is there was no retention. So anybody could, if they recognized it as a weapon behind the mag pouch, is grab it and take the blade. Or sometimes the blade would fall out if you're rolling on the ground with a suspect, as I have, and many of you law enforcement officers that are watching this morning, you've rolled on the ground with some suspects. So you know what I'm talking about. So the next thing TDI is, they come up with this. And this is called the hinderer. You're seeing a similar concept here. You've still got that design curved blade, and it does what a knife is supposed to do. It's supposed to keep your hand away from the cutting surface. You got some jimping here on the back to give you a good thumb purchase. You've got the Warncliffe blade design. We'll talk more about that here in a little bit, but it pushes the cutting power out toward the tip. And guess what, folks? They address the concern of lockability. This is locked into the sheath. As you can see, I have to push it to get it to come out. Really cool concept. If I was still LEO today, I would probably be running one of these behind my mag pouch or somewhere on my kit. I really like this. Let's talk about the Ronin 2. If you're just joining me, we're going over gadgets. This week's gadgets is edge weapons, and we got a lot of stuff to cover, so I'm going to keep moving. I think you're going to like this guy. This is Ronin. This is the Ronin 2. And you see I've got a lanyard on here. And it's pretty slick little design. The lanyard loops around my belt, and I run it back through it and then wear it inside my trousers like so. When I want to deploy the knife, and I use the knife in any manner I decide. And when I go, the cool thing I like about using this kind of system with a fixed blade is, this is now dangling outside my trousers. And when I want to put it back in, I sheath the knife safely, and then I stuff it back in my trousers. So there's no chance of really harming yourself in the reholstering of the fixed blade. And that's, folks, pretty dangerous thing to do when you're reholstering with your fixed blade. Just like you're reholstering with your firearm in the appendix position, reholstering with this in the appendix position, equally as dangerous. But again, you see the Warncliffe design. It's made by Spyderco, designed by Mr. Michael Janich. Really like this. It's the fixed blade version, basically, of the Yojimbo 2, which we'll talk about here in a second. So, big fan of the Ronin. Lastly, on fixed blades, and then I'll take a break and chat with you for a minute, is we're going to talk about the Sock P. The Sock P is made by Benchmade. If you're not familiar with this guy, I saw it at Warrior Camp I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, one of our combatives instructors, Mr. Jason Kelly, shout out to you, sir, an amazing grappler with American Top Team. He came to Warrior Camp and he was rocking the sock P. When we were doing it, he was using the trainer, of course, and let me plug trainers right out of the gate, man. If you don't have a trainer for your knife, you need to have one. That's how we get better. But the concept with this guy is you put it on your plate carrier, so you're riding it on your kit. You put it center line of the body so you can grab it easily with equal hand, or you can put it down your trousers, and the only thing that will be exposed is that little piece of the ring. It's got some jimping on the top here. You can use it in an ice pick configuration. You can use it in the Mike Janich configuration for slashing. But the idea of this particular setup was that you could. One of the problems has always been. Let me back up to the problem that this thing is trying to solve. Is if you're forced to use your knife, and now I've got to transition to my firearm. What do I do with this? Am I really going to speed reholster a fixed blade? It could be dangerous. So this gives you the ability to draw and fire your handgun and still have some sort of positive retention on the knife. Now, here's the deal. The makers of this weren't thinking some sort of weird John Wick, I'm stabbing in 1 minute and shooting in the other. That's absolutely not what this thing is designed to do. So there's some really cool videos you can find on the interwebs using the Sock P, and I'll leave it to those folks. I bought it. I trained with it a little bit. I will tell you that I have some concerns about this clip. But if I was rocking a plate carrier still, and I'm not, I'm an old guy, I'm a retired Marine officer. I don't wear plate carriers anymore, don't own one. But I could see the value in it has holes here for a reason, so you can actually secure this to your kit. And I think I would probably be rocking one then. So before I get into my pocket folders, let's see who's on this morning. Walt Davis, good morning, sir. Brad, good morning. Semper Fi, sir. Brett, you bring up a great point about defending yourself in court. I'm glad you said that. Jocko's rocking the TDI. Good on you. Steven, good morning, sir, from Houston. Brian, John, love the knife. Yep. Precision holsters should make a sheath for the TDI. Probably not a bad idea. There's also a smaller version of the TDI, Doug says. Doug's a patrol lieutenant, known as the LDK, last ditch knife. I might have to check that out, Doug. I was not familiar with that. Tom, good morning. Love a neck knife. Yeah, I've got one of those. I guess I could show it to you if I've got it here. Neck knife is kind of new to me, yeah. Mike Valley, good morning, sir. Randall Scott. Scott says, I'm kind of a sissy when it comes to knives. I'm perfectly comfortable with grenades and explosives strapped to me, but hand me a knife and I get all nervous. Brother, you're preaching to the choir, and you should be nervous. I'm glad you said that, which is why we're going to talk about training and trainers and all this other stuff. Yeah, knives scare the crap out of me. I totally agree with you on that. But there was a point about defensibility. Let's go back to the thing I started this with is, what do you want this to do? My problem with those, whether it's a punch dagger or some sort of knife and your plan is I'm just going to stab them till they get off of me, as Mr. Janich says, and I hate to keep quoting him, but I believe in his stuff, is what does your work product look like when you have to defend what you did in court? And that is a valid concern. And Brett, I'm glad you brought that up. Your work product is the assailant that attacked you. What are they going to look like at the end of this defense? Now, you can say, I don't care about that, but I will tell you, you need to care about it. There was a case where a Filipino gentleman here in the United States was forced to defend himself, and he was a Kali expert, and he was incredibly good with knives. And he's spinning and cutting and spinning and cutting, and I think the guy had over 100 and something slashes. And even though he was the robber, when it went to court, the issue of proportionality came out. And like, well, did you have to cut him this many times? So what they had to do was, as I understand it, the way it was told to me, they literally set up some bob, the body opponent bag, made by Century Martial Arts. They set up something like that in the courtroom, and they gave the guy a marker and let him go to work. But again, he's having to show what his level of training did for him, and how the assailant ended up looking as sliced up as he did. So we don't want to do that. Our idea is, I'm going to make a few strategic cuts. They're going to cut tendons. Hands are going to relax and come open, and I'm going to be able to move on down the road. A great point about defensibility, and also a great point about the scariness of knives, because they are. Okay, let's talk about folders. First folder we're going to talk about is Swiss Army knife. Now, I don't carry this thing. I talked about it last week, and I carry it with me all the time, but I really don't use the blade on this. I'm going to tell you why. Because about 20-something years ago, old Rich Brown, your buddy and pal, was using this thing in the field to cut. I don't remember if I was cutting cordage or what I was cutting with it. And I was bearing down on this knife, and the knife rolled in my hand and closed on me. So I had to get brought out of the field, get 5 stitches, but I almost cut the tendon on my trigger finger. So after that, I'm like, you know what? I will use a fixed blade knife or some sort of locking blade knife. But what's great about this little pocket-sized tool is it has so many amazing tools on it. I don't have to go hunting for a Phillips head screwdriver. I don't have to go hunting for a bottle opener, a can opener, or a wrench or whatever. I use my Swiss Army knife. So big fan, but it doesn't, the blade don't lock, and like Scott said, it scares me. I don't want to get cut again. The UK legal knife. I introduced this one last week, and I'm not going to go into it again. If you're like, how in the world is this thing legal in the UK? You'll have to watch last week's show to find out. So that's another folder. All right, now we're going to get into the self-defense folders. I'm going to show you both of these at the same time, because you'll see the similarity. This is a Black Talon 2 by Cold Steel. And this is the Matriarch 2 by Spyderco. Let's talk about this one briefly. As you can see, it's a serrated hawk bill knife. Both of these knives are hawk billed. You can't stab anybody with these knives. These are self-defense only knives. They're not necessarily made to be used in an offensive capacity, which I like that. I think that's an interesting idea. It's got the Emerson wave opener. As you can see, it's got a serrated edge. I don't know if it's coming out, but it's serrated. There's some problems with serrated edge knives. Let's get those out of the way. Serrated knives work incredibly well on flesh, but they can and have fouled a bit on blue jeans and leather jackets and some of this other stuff. So they're not necessarily great, but this is an amazing knife. If you're not familiar with the Emerson wave opener, I'll tell you real quick. All these folders are designed to be carried in the tip up configuration, meaning the tip is up as it slides into your pocket. As you slowly draw this out of your pocket, this little wave opening feature will catch on your trousers and will open as you draw the blade. It's an amazing tool. We can talk about that more on another episode, but suffice it to say that, let me give you the origin story as I understand it on this knife. This is the Matriarch 2, and it's based on a knife from Spyderco called a Civilian. And as I understand it, the DEA, I believe it was the DEA, they went to Spyderco and said, our agents are deep cover, they're going in these places, they're completely unarmed. We need a knife that they can save their life with, cause a lot of damage to someone and escape. Can you build us something like that? So they put their heads together and they come up with this thing called the Civilian. Basically looks like this. And it's a wicked little knife. But both of these knives are phenomenal. They're not cheap. They're probably 150 bucks. They're made out of amazing steel. They both have the wave opening feature. Cold Steel has the triad locking blade. And look at this, the way it's designed. Again, ergonomics are important, and it's very ergonomically well put together. The steel is impeccable on Spyderco and Cold Steel. Highly recommend them. I like them. Can't stab with them. It's something to consider. But what it does do, and let me show you this one more time. Very similar to that Warncliffe blade design we talked about, where you want the cutting power instead of the blade moving away. I'll show you what I mean by that. Most of the knives on the market look like this, right? This is a Spyderco Delica, I think, maybe. But as you cut with it, notice how the blade is rolling into the material that you're cutting. Whereas with a Hawkbill or a Warncliffe straight design edge weapon, the cutting power is pushing in the deeper you go. It's ripping and tearing. Pretty vicious stuff. Let's talk about alpha knives. And that's spelled A-L-F-A, alpha knives. These are designed and made by Mr. Damon Lusky, who's a BJJ black belt and an incredible knife maker. I can attest to that. These are a set that you can get from him. They're, again, designed to be worn in the appendix position. This is the trainer, as you might imagine. You see the Warncliffe design. The quality on these handmade knives are phenomenal. And again, they're not cheap, but you get what you pay for. And you can hear probably an amazing positive locking. If you really want a well-made appendix carry fixed blade knife that has the Warncliffe blade design, I'm going to tell you right now, Alpha Knives, they're out of Georgia, A-L-F-A. Check them out. Phenomenal knife. And again, get the trainer. Before we go any further, let me jump in here and see what's going on in the comments section. Razmik, I hope I'm pronouncing your name. Good morning, sir. Jesse, good morning. My old Marine buddy's on here. Good morning, Jesse. Mr. Sam Day, my old partner in crime. Good morning, Sam. Okay, Brett, good morning. Yeah, hawkbills are pretty scary. Brett said that Mr. Craig Douglas with South Narc used to carry a hawkbill back in the day. Vicious. You can do some good stuff with that. So now we come to the point of the program where we talk about what do I carry today. I carry this. Hope you can see it. This is the Yojimbo 2. And it is a folding knife. And I really like it. The problem with the Yojimbo 2, let me tell you about the problem as to why I stopped carrying it for a while and carried my Hawk blades that had the wave opener. Because the Yojimbo 2 did not come with a wave opener. But that wasn't a problem if you could open a knife like that with one hand, the flick of one hand, and not everybody can. It does take some training to do that. But I wanted this wave opening feature. Well, 5x5 Combat Solutions finally came up with this. And again, it's not necessarily cheap. This little gadget will set you back about $30. But if you have a Yojimbo 2 or any Spyderco knife that has the hole in it, guess what? This little gadget will fit in there. And it's an amazing, well-constructed piece of gear. And once I put this on the Yojimbo 2, and it became a wave opener now, so that when I pull it out of my pocket, the knife is ready to go. Now this is the perfect self-defense knife, probably. Can be used to stab. You can see the incredible ergonomics on the handle design. Thumb rides right there. And that is the grip that we use in Martial Blade Concepts. The blade is faced out. The thumb is right here. And we're in a position where we can cut with this. Yojimbo 2, made in Golden, Colorado, out of some amazing steel. Again, not a cheap knife. Probably looking at $150. Another 30 with the 5x5 Combat Solutions gadget on there that allows it to transform into a wave opener. But just an absolutely phenomenal tool. And you'll notice that it's very similar to that fixed blade Ronin 2 that I showed you earlier on. So if you want a fixed blade similar to the Yojimbo 2, check out the Ronin 2. Anyway, this is what I carry. And I would be remiss if I did not discuss training equipment. So let's talk about training equipment. You got to have trainers. Even if it's just something cheap and accessible from Amazon like these guys, you got to have a trainer. I prefer the steel trainers like these to rubber or plastic because there is a pain penalty that's associated with screwing up a technique. You're going to feel it if you get stabbed with one of these. It is not fun. You say, Rich, well, you've been talking a lot about you don't like the curved design of the blade. You like the Warncliffe. Not a problem. We got the Warncliffe covered. So you can pick up these. I'm probably on Amazon. I got them. I bought them one year at Marshall Blade Camp. There was somebody selling them. I really like them. And I'm going to tell you right now, these are incredibly painful when your partner, Mr. Mike Seeklander, jabs you in the thigh with that right there. You're going to feel it, and you're going to be bruised for some time to come. If you got a wave opening knife, Kershaw's got you covered. This is a little cheap, probably $20-something. But it does have the wave opening feature on it, and it is a decent little trainer. It's a little sloppy right now, but I've used it a lot. Let's talk about protecting your eyes. Wearing some sort of ballistic glasses that can stop it, because I'll tell you right now, I've seen guys when they're training and whack, they get one of these to the eyeball. It was all bad. If you're training with edge weapons, the first thing you should do is get all the knives out of the room, get all the guns out of the room, get any of that crap out of there. Pat each other down if you want to, but make sure that each participant is completely safe in their environment. And there's nothing that you can grab nearby in the heat of the moment to attack with. That's why we say, well, take the guns off, take everything off, because if you train to, I lose my knife and I reach for the gun, guess what you're going to do under the stress of pressure testing these techniques? You may draw the firearm. That'd be all bad. We don't want to do that. When you're talking about these Marshall Blade concepts and you're talking about slashing and cutting, you can imagine that your forearms are going to take a beating, and your biceps tendon. I don't know if you can see that bruise right there. Ouch. So you can use one of these right here by McDavid. And if you're joining me and you've been training Marshall Blade concepts, you're probably familiar with this. This is made by McDavid, and it's a thigh wrap, but you can wrap it on your forearms and protect your forearms when you're doing training. McDavid also makes these little hex things, pads. These are knee and elbow pads, but they work really good if you want to pad up your biceps and triceps and forearms. So again, I'm telling you to train, but I'm telling you to train safely. Make sure you got your training equipment. Make sure you and your partner take care of each other out there when you're training with your edge weapons. All right. That concludes my gadget. Before we talk about next week, do I have any questions on anything we just covered? Tony, good morning. Yeah, Mike did try to steal my Yojimbo. He was looking at it longingly. I believe he has one, but he didn't have the wave opener on it, and I highly encourage you to get those. Ryan says he's got the Yojimbo 1. That's amazing. I have not seen that. It said it's blue. That sounds cool. Matt Sims, good morning, sir. Tyra says he carries the CRKT M16 sharpener. My wife's kitchen sharpener a couple times. Bought it at the PX in Pendleton. Semper Fi. No Tantos or auto knives? That's a great question, Robert. Let's talk about that. So we talked about the fact that with a Tanto knife, like he's talking about, the tip up here would kind of move away from the person as you're cutting. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. What I am saying is this is the style I'm trained on. My initial experience in edge weapons wasn't defensive context. It was an offensive context. When I was a Marine, I went to close combat instructor school, and there was an edge weapons component of that. There was a bayonet fighting component of that. So we had to be able to teach all that stuff. But in the Marine Corps, we had one way of fighting with a knife. It was very tip down centric. And it was all slashing in the throat, because guess what? Your enemy combatant is probably going to be wearing some kit. So stabbing to the torso is probably out, because you're going to be stabbing into a plate carrier, into a vest, etc. They're probably going to have a helmet on their head, and perhaps, maybe not. But anyway, the story was the neck was probably one of the things that could cause exsanguination the fastest and was the least protected. So you wanted something that you could fight with in that configuration, and that's what we did. I moved away from all that because the civilian context of an edge weapons defense may not require that level of violence. But let's get this out of the way. Anytime you use an edge weapon, it's lethal force every single time. Don't think, well, on the use of force continuum, I'm moving up to the firearm, and just below the firearm is going to be my edge weapon. That's absolutely not the case. If you're using an edge weapon on somebody, you are in lethal force, and you better be able to justify that. Rich bruises like a peach, man. That is absolutely true. And it used to be worse when I was on blood thinners, man. I would bruise up really bad. Brett says, yeah, he has those wraps. They work great. Very nice. Good. All right, guys. I know we've been on here. We've gone a little long. Let me tell you real quick about the vault, and then we'll wrap this up with comments. I talked to you about the article you need to check out. It's our Edge Weapons vlog. It's in the AmericanWarriorSociety.com. Check that out. It doesn't cost you anything. It's considered an article, even though it's actually video content, because it's just us talking. We're not teaching anything, just giving you our thoughts and ideas. I talked to you about episode number 133, and that is Active Shooter Response with Mike Janich and Mike Seeklander, the hosts of Best Defense on the Outdoor Channel. Check that out. They're going to give you their thoughts on surviving an active shooter. Then we talked about all my edge weapons considerations. We talked about safety. We talked about what is that, if it's got a Tonto blade, what's the best way to use it? If you carry a karambit, that's cool. But do you know how to use it, or can you just spin it around and impress your friends with it? So make sure that the edge weapon that you choose is something that you know how to use the way that blade was designed. If you have a clinch pick, I think they're phenomenal. I would really love to learn that style, but at this moment, I don't. So if you carry one of those, make sure you know how to employ it in accordance with the way it's designed. So then finally, let's talk about what's inside the training vault. Now, the training vault is where we have all of our premium content, all the training modules, all the learning modules, everything that's in there. And right now, Mr. Mike Seeklander and I are working on how to design the curriculum so that it's easier. Because I know, guys, you get inside the training vault and it's easy to get overwhelmed with the volume of content that's in there. So we want to make it a little bit easier for you to get in and digest. But one of the modules that's really easy to digest is the Edge Weapons module. Mr. Mike Janich gives you an introduction to martial blade concepts. He talks to you about how to select a knife, and you'll hear him say some of the same things I said this morning because I'm parroting him a lot because I really believe in his stuff. He's going to talk to you about, knife deployment. I showed you the one-arm flick. He's got a key opening way to open a knife, and all these other crazy things that he can do with a knife is amazing. Training and how to train safely. He's going to talk to you about knife grip basics. He's going to talk to you about stance, angles of attack, angles of defense, how do you defend, etc. So all that stuff is for you. It's inside the training vault. Your first month is for free. Doesn't cost you anything if you get in after a month or within that first month you don't like it. Not a problem. You can jump out with no penalty whatsoever. So any questions for me before we wrap up? Guys, I know this went a little long. Thanks for sticking with me. Paul says, great info, thanks. Thank you, Paul, for joining me this early morning. Make sure you're carrying legally. If you survive the fight only to go to prison, that may not be the best plan. Educate you in the laws. Man, Brett, thank you for that. Brett's a retired law enforcement officer out there from California. Incredible advice, and I will tell you, good morning, Elkie. He's right. And I will say this, sometimes this simple fact gets lost on a lot of people. I've used all level of force against other human beings, from punching and kicking and choking and dropping bombs on people, smashing people in the face with the muzzle of my rifle, and everything in between. And the reason I'm not rotting away in some prison is because every single one of those uses of force was well documented, reasonable, proportional, justified, and probably under the sanction of some sort of law, like whether it's U.S. law or state law that I was working for, under the color of law. I say all that to say, I have seen guys when I worked as a corrections officer, they use one level of force one time on somebody and end up with an 8-year prison sentence because the use of force was unlawful. So Brett's point is incredibly well made. And I know that our law enforcement officers out there that are listening to this show this morning, and I know you guys, there's a lot of them on here. You know what I'm talking about. Make sure that your level of force is reasonable, necessary, and justified and documented if possible. Brian, great job, Rich. Thanks. Mike, Valley, thanks. Elke, I didn't get a notice or find you now. Oh dear, I'm sorry. Guys, these shows, it's a little clunky, and that's by virtue of Facebook. If you go to the American Warrior Society Facebook page, hopefully it'll be on there. Last week, I think one of the problems we had was with the audio, and that may have been because I tried to tape it from actually inside the event. I thought it would make it easier, but I don't think it did. I think it ended up messing up our comments thread. Anybody have anything else for me before I jump off here and let you get on your day? While I'm waiting, I'll go ahead and kind of polish that off. And again, you can get one of those tumblers on the American Warrior store. Yeah. Matt Sims, great point. Hey, brother, please consider adopting the term active murderer instead of active shooter. Yeah, well said. And I've actually said that on the podcast, active murderer. I definitely prefer that term. We'll talk more on another show about, I hate those kind of things like gun violence. When somebody rents a Ryder truck and drives it through a crowd of people and kills 80 people, do we call it rented truck violence? No, of course not. And Matt is a pro shooter, I believe, Matt. I don't know if you'd consider yourself that. I certainly would consider you a pro shooter, but yeah, absolutely. Those of us in the shooting community, I'm a shooter. You're watching this morning, you're probably a shooter too. Don't lump us in there. So you're absolutely right, Matt. Active murderer, spot on, brother. Brian says, down it on the coffee. I think I did. Enjoy the show. Thanks, Scott. I appreciate it. Hopefully it was worth getting up early this morning. Doug says, good show. My beautiful wife says, come home. Rob Pincus likes the term spree killer. You know, these terms they're important, and I could really geek out on terms because I'm a big fan of etymology and words. And if you don't know, Matin Va, I'm teaching myself Scots Gaelic. That means good morning. So yeah, I get really nerded out on words because words mean things. And the other thing is, if you were to start using these terms like mass murder, well, the FBI has a definition for that. Local law enforcement has a definition for that. The news media, God knows what definition they're going to use. But these terms do have meaning, and I think that active murderer is probably not a bad idea. Great show. Enjoyed listening, Brett. Thanks for your time. Good. Guys, man, thank you for joining me. I'm sorry we went a little long here. But again, thanks for joining me to talk about edge weapons. Next week, I'm not going to tell you what the gadget is. If you've enjoyed some of the other gadgets we've talked about in the last few shows, this is going to be a surprise. So make sure to tune in next Friday morning, 0630, Coffee with Rich. And thanks for coming in.